Okay, ready to Spartan up.
Always up for a challenge.
Today's deep dive takes us straight to ancient Greece. But trust me, this isn't your typical toga party. We're peeling back the layers on Spartan training, going way beyond those six-pack abs and Hollywood fight scenes. When you think about
Hey,
Spartan,
you picture these ultimate warrior machines, right?
exactly.
Great.
But what really made them tick, we've got some fascinating source material lined up, taking us right inside their world.
From grueling workouts to, wait for it,
State-sanctioned stealing.
you heard that right.
Today, we're figuring out what made a Spartan, well, Spartan.
What's fascinating is how their training wasn't just about building warriors, it was about shaping an entire society. We tend to focus on the physicality, but the Spartans understood that true strength came from a very particular mindset, cultivated from childhood.
So it wasn't just about hitting the gym, it was more like mental boot camp from day one.
Exactly. Take the infamous Spartan physique. We imagine these muscle-bound giants, but ancient sources actually describe them as lean, agile, almost wiry.
Really?
Think long-distance runners, not bodybuilders.
Interesting. So less bulk, more about speed and stamina.
They trained for endurance, running barefoot over rough terrain, pushing their bodies to adapt to harsh conditions.
Makes those barefoot runs on the beach look a bit tame, huh? I can barely handle a pebble, let alone a mountain path.
It's a great example of how their training wasn't arbitrary. It was directly related to the environment they lived in, the demands of warfare at the time. They weren't just trying to look intimidating, they were preparing for very real battles.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about this whole stealing thing? Our source mentions it as a core part of their training, which sounds a bit wild, to be honest.
It's one of those details that really makes you question everything you thought you knew about the Spartans. Imagine this. Young boys, barely old enough to carry a shield, encouraged to steal food. But here's the catch. They were punished severely, not for the stealing itself, but for getting caught.
So it's less about condoning theft and more about resourcefulness under pressure. I mean, talk about high-stakes hide and seek.
Precisely. It's easy to see how this seemingly bizarre practice cultivated a unique set of skills. Cunning, stealth, the ability to think on your feet, to assess risk and make split-second decisions. These weren't just delinquents, they were being molded into strategic thinkers, resourceful problem solvers.
So picture this. You're a young Spartan, hungry, resourceful. Did they at least provide some basic rations, or were they completely on their own?
The sources suggest their rations were deliberately meager, designed to push them to find their own ways to supplement. It's almost like Lycurgus, their lawgiver, was saying, I'll give you the bare minimum to survive. The rest, you figure it out.
I consider myself pretty good at scavenging snacks from the office vending machine, but this takes it to a whole other level. But seriously, forcing them to be resourceful.
Yeah.
It's brutal, but you can see how it would create a certain mindset. What stands out to you about this approach, especially compared to how, say, other civilizations trained their warriors?
It's the calculated nature of the hardship. The emphasis on not just surviving, but excelling within a system designed to test their limits. It wasn't enough to be strong. They had to be sharp, adaptable, able to bend the rules without breaking them.
This system of stealing, even with the risk, it almost seems designed to weed out a certain type of personality, wouldn't you say? It's almost like they were hardwired for a very specific kind of battlefield, one where being underestimated was an advantage.
Exactly. And this wasn't just limited to their physical training.
You're talking about the mind games, right? The source material mentions something about silent marches and these synchronized war dances, the perikios.
Imagine this. You're facing a Spartan army.
Let me guess. No roaring battle cries, no boasting, just hundreds of warriors moving in eerie silence.
Precisely. No wasted energy, no outward display of emotion, just cold, calculated discipline.
I can see how that would be unnerving.
It's unsettling, even terrifying for their opponents. And then, in the midst of this silent advance, they break into the perikios.
Which is, for those of us who haven't brushed up on our ancient Greek dance moves.
Imagine a perfectly synchronized war dance, a display of both martial skill and unwavering unity.
So not exactly your typical pre-game warm-up routine.
Not unless your idea of a warm-up involves weaponized choreography. But think about the psychological impact.
It's like they're saying, we're so in sync, so disciplined, that even our dances could kill you.
And you know what's even more fascinating? This emphasis on psychological warfare wasn't limited to the battlefield. It was woven into the fabric of their society.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, our source mentions this system where 3 Spartan leaders would each select their top 100 warriors. Now, you might think this would foster a sense of camaraderie, right?
Yeah, like an elite squad, brothers in arms kind of thing.
But it wasn't quite that simple. This wasn't just about teamwork, it was about constant, calculated competition.
So even within their elite ranks, it was still every Spartan for himself.
In a way, yes. Each man was driven to prove himself worthy of his spot, to outperform not just his rivals, but also his own comrades. Imagine the pressure, the drive to excel, knowing that your place in this elite group was never guaranteed.
That's intense. Was there ever a point where they dialed back the competition, or was it full-on Spartan all the time?
From what we can gather, this competitive spirit permeated every aspect of Spartan life, even their leisure activities.
So no friendly games of, like, ancient Greek frisbee.
Hunting, for example, was considered a crucial part of their training, even in peacetime. It allowed them to hone their skills, stay sharp, and of course, indulge their competitive spirit.
So even their downtime was basically just another opportunity to prove they were the best of the best.
And it didn't stop there. Even marriage, the foundation of family life in most cultures, was viewed through the lens of warrior excellence.
You're kidding, right? They factored competition into marriage.
Spartan men weren't exactly encouraged to settle down young. In fact, peak physical condition was practically a prerequisite for starting a family.
Wow. Talk about high standards. I guess there's nothing like a little societal pressure to keep you in the gym.
But it wasn't just about physical appearances. Lycurgus believed that only the fittest should reproduce, ensuring the strength and vitality of future generations.
So finding a life partner was basically like Spartan Tinder. Swipe right on the strongest warrior. It all sounds a bit intense, even for a society obsessed with military might.
And remember how we talked about the psychological aspect of their training? Well, that extended to their personal relationships as well.
Okay, how so?
The Spartans believed that emotional attachment, particularly between husbands and wives, could make a warrior soft,
Right.
weaken their resolve. They even discouraged couples from spending too much time together, fearing it would dull their competitive edge.
Wow. Talk about tough love. So much for a romantic candlelit dinner in ancient Sparta.
It's a stark reminder that their entire society was geared towards creating warriors, even at the expense of personal freedom and emotional intimacy. But it does make you wonder, was there any room for individuality in this system? Did anyone ever question the rules, the constant pressure to conform?
It makes you think about the price of this kind of collective strength, doesn't it? And whether it was ultimately sustainable. Speaking of pushing back, did anyone ever try to dodge the draft in Sparta? Were there consequences for showing even a hint of fear?
Let's just say there were strong incentives to face your fears head-on in ancient Sparta.
I bet. I mean, we're talking about a society that practically invented the military drill sergeant, right?
To put it mildly, their system was practically designed to eliminate even the thought of cowardice. Imagine this, you're a Spartan warrior, raised from childhood to embody courage and discipline. Then on the battlefield, you hesitate, you falter.
And boom, your warrior reputation goes up in smoke.
More than that, we're talking about lifelong disgrace, social isolation, the works. You'd become a trembling, a term for those who cracked under pressure. Stripped of your citizenship, your family shamed, denied the right to marry or even have children.
Okay, talk about tough love. They weren't kidding around. It's heavy stuff, but you can see how that level of social pressure, that fear of failure, would be a powerful motivator.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about individual consequences. Remember, the Spartans believed that the strength of their society depended on the unwavering courage of its citizens. A single act of cowardice wasn't just a personal failing, it was a threat to the entire system.
So it was all about maintaining this image of the invincible Spartan army, even if it meant sacrificing individual freedom and even basic human connection.
It makes you question, at what cost? Sure, the Spartans were undeniably effective on the battlefield, but was it a sustainable way to build a society? That seems to be the question our source is wrestling with.
It's that classic dilemma, isn't it? The ends justifying the means. On one hand, you've got this society that produced incredibly disciplined, courageous warriors, the stuff of legend. But on the other, you have to acknowledge the human cost. The sacrifices demanded in the name of collective strength. It's easy to sit here, centuries removed, and judge their methods. But maybe there are some valuable lessons we can glean from the Spartan experience, even if we don't agree with everything they did.
Absolutely. I think the real takeaway isn't about replicating their harsh training methods, but understanding the deeper principles at play. The Spartans understood that true strength goes beyond physical prowess. It's about mental resilience, self-discipline, the ability to endure hardship, and a willingness to push your limits. both physically and mentally.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because even today, we still use the word Spartan to describe someone who is incredibly disciplined, resilient, able to withstand discomfort. It's like their legacy lives on in our language, even if their society is long gone.
It's true, the Spartan legend continues to fascinate us.
It really does. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into ancient Sparta. Thanks for joining us, and until next time.
Stay curious.
And stay strong.